Good afternoon, Radio Faithfuls. You are on to the 2 p.m. news on Royal 88.4 FM. Let's have a trip to our lead stories. The Cameroonian government intends to collect at least 58 million CFA francs worth of tax from income-generating activities for 2026 fiscal year. Plus, Cameroon is now experiencing shorter days and longer nights.
Currently, what we are facing is the winter solstice, so it's the north pole, which is actually going to be tilted, making nights to be longer.
Out of the country, flooding in Tunisia has killed at least 4 people, while schools and businesses have been forced to close. And in sports, Cameroon senior men's national team will this day kick off their campaign at the 27th edition of the African Cup of Nations in Kigali, Rwanda. Those were the headlines. Stay tuned for the development of these stories and several others. Good afternoon once more. We begin today's news in education, where the integration of digital technologies into educational settings has transformed the learning landscape in several schools. This move towards digitalization has significant pedagogical impact on the educational system. Pedagogue Julius Neba highlights some point of our reporter Glory Gange.
With this concept of digitalization is that we were to teach vague in the air, we can now transform it into a way that the learners can see it live. We're talking about a forest. We can bring the forest to life. The children can see all the activities that are taking place in the forest. And then with the digitalization, we teach the children how to make use of certain concepts as well. It render our lesson pragmatic. We teach them apps where they can Google and discover what other learners in other developed countries are doing. By so doing, they struggle to use their knowledge that they've gotten to match up with that of other people. They'll no more be reading books just to have certificates sit with them hoping on the government. They'll be able to see what other learners that are at their level in other countries produce through digitalization. They will also struggle to copy it, thereby becoming autonomous and developing the entrepreneurial spirit in them. So to make this country emerge is to empower the educational system.
In more education news, a compilation of documents and registration for public examinations are ongoing in schools nationwide. About this exercise, various schools set deadlines for the submission of necessary documents by candidates sitting for the different public exams. Glory Ngange spoke to a school administrator on the respect of deadlines and penalties for latecomers and now reports.
Keyaka Edward is the principal of a mission secondary school situated in Kolbong, Yaoundé. He starts by highlighting the various documents required for registration of one of the public exams.
A photocopy of birth certificate, photocopy of resource slip for those at available, amount of money empty and payment of money corresponding to the number of subjects they have to go in for. For those of the external center, they also have to procure a photocopy of the national identity card, in addition to the form they fill that has the number of papers they are going in for and other information. All of this done, the child will generate an individual timetable and sign before the registration process is complete.
For schools like his, who take exams organized by the GCE board, deadlines for submission of documents are scheduled before that of the GCE board.
Individual schools just set a deadline so that they can spur up the documentation and the signatory part of the exercise. But it's an online registration which has a deadline for the registration to expire. That deadline is given by the GCE board, and after that deadline, that's when a penalty will come in.
In a case where candidates do not respect deadlines, they are confined to the following process and penalty.
The GCE board states which centers can go in for late registration, and penalty of about 5,000 is paid per week. But for individual schools, they are not supposed to set any penalties for late registration, but they just need to set their deadlines so that if they are internal candidates, they respect that deadline. They organize in such a way that can give them room to do their internal organization. But for my school, every student has been registered.
Keyaka Edward ends by noting that the date set for end of registration by the General Certificate of Education Board is February 14, 2026.
And as you heard in the headlines, Cameroon's government intends to collect at least 58 million CFA francs worth of tax from income-generating activities from prisoners for the 2026 fiscal year. A tax reform that provides for a revision and regulation of fees related to the remuneration of prison labor whose rates were considered outdated. But then this provision in the finance law remains vague and does not really explain the mechanism put in place to ease the collection of this new tax. Jeffrey Tachum spoke to an expert and compiled the analysis in this report.
For the 2026 fiscal year, the finance law has introduced the concept of revenues from prison labor carried out by inmates. But just how will this measure be implemented? Stefan Kwam is a fiscal economic expert. He begins by explaining the legal provisions surrounding this tax.
Cameroonian legislation enhances the principle of withholding tax at source. This means that the employees of these inmates become the legally liable parties for this tax. Their duty is to withhold the tax directly from the inmate wage before paying out the net amount.
Going further into his analysis, the expert says the concept of tax imposition on inmate labor is far from being new, but only existed within an informal system.
The income of inmates must be traceable, which requires their work to be formally regulated. And this reveals a core weakness in the state new plan. Inmate labor is not a new concept in Cameroon. It has long existed, but within a completely informal system. Therefore, for this fiscal measure to be viable, a comprehensive formal regulatory framework is an absolute prerequisite.
To conclude, Stefan Kwam points out the need to consider the annual system of income declaration, although it's not clear whether it also applies to inmates.
We must also consider the system of annual income declaration. While it's unclear if this applies automatically to inmates, it would allow them to voluntarily declare any income earned and settle the corresponding tax.
According to the Ministry of Finance, these provisions are intended to diversify the state's non-tax sources of revenue, amongst others, in a context of growing budget constraints.
Jeffrey Tachum signing out in that report. And if you are just joining us, you are on to the 2 p.m. news on Reality 8.4 FM. On to this societal story, the phenomenon of criticizing and judging women's capacity on the steering. They are mostly judged for being a very slow while driving, and others lack certain levels of driving. In line with this, Frino Crispin, our head of reporters brigade, interviewed some Cameroonians on the above issue and compiled the following report.
Where did you learn your driving skills? Who gave you a car when you are scared of the road? These are some of the hateful phrases you get on the road whenever a woman is seen handling the steering. These comments, according to Elvis and Williams, are due to the fact that
most of the time, some of them are weak. Driving, you need courage to drive. So most of them, when they get to a certain place, instead of use courage to pass, they'll slow down, they'll be afraid, and that will cause hold up on the way and also certain accident. They are not like men who usually take certain courage.
Most people really criticize them because when they are in a place where there's traffic or they are in difficulties, they panic, and when they panic, either the engine goes off or they do something that they were not supposed to do, or they block the road. So people tend to criticize them.
And to Susie, most people would criticize women on the steering are just stereotype.
Most men too, they just have this preconceived idea that since women want to do things that they do, they make it look like there are certain things that are still just restricted to the male gender. And since they see women behaving like that and maybe they don't do it well, they get angry. Not knowing that life is a learning process. We always learn. We should never think that we know a particular thing better, because a day may come up when we still see that there is something that we have to learn from what we think we know already.
Moreover, Williams believes that women should be motivated more while on steering and not judged.
It's not all women that panic on steering. It's very courageous for a woman to go out with her car, drive. It's to be encouraged. Instead of criticizing that, we are supposed to encourage them and teach them more how to drive and how to behave in traffic or in zones where the roads are bad.
According to sociologists, it is important for the population to debunk the belief that bad woman driving is a myth, stop positive aggression, and promote women driving careers.
Cameroon is now experiencing a time shift as it gradually transitions into shorter days and longer nights. The impact of this seasonal change is being felt beyond the clock as routines have been affected. Cameroonians have been sharing their experiences and coping mechanisms with the calendar change, as our reporter Ngang Nadesh reports.
According to Reynard, a Yaoundé resident, the earlier darkness is changing his schedule in a slight but more comfortable way.
This change has really affected my schedule slightly. I tend to finish my outdoor activities earlier because it gets dark sooner and I spend more time indoors in the evenings. It has also made me more conscious of managing my time during the day so I can complete important tasks before nightfall. Overall, while it has required some adjustment, it has not affected my routine in a major way.
Blaise, a university student, is doing the same routine flips, cramping up his schedule to wrap up before nightfall.
Me, I'm a student and I do my things based on how bright the day is. So lately, it has been helpful to me in the sense that I've been able to stay at home and study because I'm someone who works out a lot, and when I see that places are dark already, I have to stay at home. Things is late and it's not good to be working out late at night when places are dark, so I just have to stay home. And it's helpful because take my time, I study, read my Bible, and that's it. Sleep and wait for the next day.
Dorothy, on her part, is living life just as usual with no fuss or adjustment, totally unaware of the changing daylight hours.
Hearing that now we're in a period of longer nights and shorter day, it's surprising to me because I haven't noticed it. So me, I'm just walking around, like enjoying my life. If it's night, I go and sleep. If it's day, I get up and go to school, do my daily activities. So hearing this is surprising. I haven't noticed anything like longer night and shorter.
The reduction in daylight hours is a result of the tilting of the Earth's axis, causing the northern hemisphere to experience winter characterized by shorter days and longer nights.
And as darkness falls earlier and daylight hours shrink, it is more than just a seasonal change. Our reporter Ngang Nadesh also caught up with a meteorologist who breaks down the science behind it in the following excerpt. Take a listen to Joseph Sika.
This occurs during what is known as the winter solstice, and it's actually a period in which the Earth's poles, either the north or the south pole, are tilted at a low angle from the sun, and so limited sunlight reaches the Earth's surface, making places to be less hot and also shortening the length of the day because the sun is at a very low angle compared to the Earth's surface when the pole has been tilted. Currently, what we are facing is the winter solstice, so it's the north pole which is actually going to be tilted, making nights to be longer. It's true, in the morning you will find that around 6 o'clock places are still dark, unlike during the months of September, October, November, wherein by 6 o'clock places were already clean. So winter solstice, it always starts on the 21st of December and it's going to run through for I think till June. That's how winter solstice operates.
Joseph Sika goes further to share practical tips on how to adjust to the season and make the most of their routines.
In relation to managing this situation, especially for maybe parents and local populations, the main thing to do is actually step up using the limited time during the day to carry out activities, making sure that several activities are done within the day in consideration to the fact that the nights are going to be really longer, and by morning or so people are awake and start preparing for school or their other activities, so that when places are just getting clear, they can just kick off rather than waiting for places to get clear before they start.
In political related news, where is Kavayege Jibril? This is the question posed by many political actors in Cameroon following the National Assembly's speaker absence from the New Year's wishing ceremony at the Unity Palace, and that's at the National Assembly headquarters in Yaoundé. A situation that has created several uncertainties within the country's political scene, with many media outlets claiming he was evacuated following health issues. Bringing clarity to this instance, our reporter Evans William Jobati cornered a source within the assembly and clues in the following report.
Following persistent rumors floated by certain media outlets claiming that Honorable Kavaye Yege Jibril was medically evacuated to South Africa since January 16, 2026. Sources within the National Assembly have refuted this information. Emmanuel Ekema Ikene is the Director of Communications and Public Relations at the National Assembly.
Right now in his village, Mada Tokomere subdivision, he is in good health and he is carrying out his activities as the first class chief of Mada and the member of parliament of his area. Of recent, he just had a meeting with the youths Monday precisely, whereby he listened to them as they came to share their preoccupations for the 2026 year. And at the end, he responded to the youths that he will always be on their side to make sure that they have quality education and decent jobs subsequently to take care of themselves and their families.
In addition, our source reveals that the House Speaker, is currently carrying out his custodian activities in good health.
And if the speaker was to be evacuated, maybe he would have been in Yaoundé. As they said, he was evacuated through the Simala airport, but that is false. The speaker is not in Yaoundé. He's right now in Mada, and he has been there for all this while. So the information that we saw on social media was really damaging and embarrassing at the same time. People spend their time publishing things that are unverified.
Emmanuel Ekema Ikene, in conclusion, calls on the seriousness of all as they were mere distractions.
We have to be spending precious time talking about serious issues of the country. We're talking about the health of the Speaker of the National Assembly, and everybody wants to be the first to break the news which is not even true. Doesn't make sense at all. Cameroonians, especially the youths, we should be more serious about what will bring progress to this country, not talking about the health situations of people that deserve our utmost respect.
It should be noted that these preoccupations mounted on the web comes at a time when the country plans on holding two major elections with all eyes on the legislative one. Out of the country, Malawi's energy regulator has hiked petrol and diesel prices by more than 40%, marking the second time fuel cost is going up in 4 months. In a statement on Tuesday, the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority said the fixed pricing system of the previous government was unsustainable and had led to significant losses. The president of the country, on his part, who returned to power last year, has aimed to revive Malawi's oiling economy, but with the new price hikes, commentators say it could harm the president's effort. Flooding in Tunisia has killed at least 4 people, while schools and businesses have been forced to close after parts of the country's experienced their heaviest rainfall in more than 70 years. Authorities say all 4 deaths occurred in a Mognin in the Munster governance, according to Abderrazak Rahel, head of the forecasting at the National Institute of Meteorology. Some Tunisian regions have not seen this much rain since 1950. In more news out of the country, a South Korean court has sentenced former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to 23 years in prison after finding him guilty of insurrection charges related to disgracing ex-president's short-lived declaration on martial law. Han was today found guilty of abetting Yoon's briefing imposition of martial law and for failing to hold a lawful cabinet meeting as required by the South Korean law after the decree to mobilize the military was ordered by the then president in December 2024. Japan is set to restart the world's largest nuclear power plant as it returns to its energy source 1.5 decades after the Fukushima disaster prompted a nationwide shutdown of reactions. Tokyo's Electric Power Corporation TEPCO announced on Tuesday that it was proceeding with preparations and aims to restart operations at the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa plant in Nagita province. Safety concerns, however, persist with memories of a strong earthquake which struck the area in 2007.
And in sports, as you got in the headlines, Cameroon's senior men's national team will kick off their 27th Men's Handball African Cup of Nations campaign today in Kigali, Rwanda. The Indomitable Lionesses are set to face a tough opening test against the Carthage Eagles of Tunisia at 3 p.m. at the BK Arena. Today's game comes after a rigorous preparation and friendly matches against Gabon, Rwanda, Congo, Brazzaville, and Angola for the competition, which will run on to January 31st. The Cameroon National Paralympic Committee has concluded its 14th Board of Directors session at the Yaoundé Multipurpose Sports Complex. During the set gathering held yesterday, the committee audited the 2025 sporting season and established a strategic roadmap for the 2026 calendar. Meanwhile, during the set session, the committee's president Jean-Jacques Dodomo celebrated the team's recent achievements, highlighted by an impressive haul of 33 medals, including 11 medals in gold. Cameroon's Indomitable Lions are wrapping up preparations for their futsal AFCON opening qualifying game against South Sudan. In a final warm-up match played on Tuesday at the Yaoundé Multipurpose Sports Complex, the national side secured a 5-3 victory over Social FC. The friendly match served as a vital dress rehearsal for the head coach Louis René Epie, allowing him to fine-tune his tactics and finalize his squad. With this, all eyes now turn to Friday, January 23, as Cameroon hosts South Sudan in the first leg of the 2026 Morocco Futsal AFCON qualifiers. And it is from that sports news that we welcome Annie Lisette Ambassa for a summary of this newscast in the French language. Good afternoon.
Bonsoir, Biwa Brian. Examen officiel, la date butoir pour le début des dossiers, pour le dépôt des dossiers, est fixée au 31 janvier 2026. Dans plusieurs établissements scolaires de la ville de Yaoundé, c'est le branle-bas. Parents et élèves font la queue devant les services de scolarité afin de ne pas rater le coach. Société, le solstice d'hiver s'impose depuis quelques jours et impacte sur les habitudes des citoyens. Selon les experts, ce phénomène se caractérise par les nuits plus longues que les journées. À l'étranger, Tunisie, les inondations ont fait 4 morts dans la ville de Moknine, au sud de Tunis.
And it is with that summary from Annie Lisette Ambassa that we put a cap to today's edition of the 2 p.m. news on Reality8.4 FM. The news was successful thanks to the technical expertise of Urish Kemo. On the cameras for our various social media handles, we had Brian Bida. Production assistance came in from Evans Williams Jobati. Script editing came in from Mapala Zita. Editorial coaching we got from Abel Bella Samari. Coordination came in from the station's manager Roger Kiek. And for general supervision, we had the Reverend Pastor Bisai Emmanuel Noel. Representation, my name is Biwa Brian, ushering you to what's up next on Reality8.4 FM, which is Sports Art, to be presented by Evans Williams Jobati. Good afternoon, Evans.
Good afternoon, Biwa Brian, and good afternoon to all the listeners of Royal FM.
So what should we expect this afternoon on Sports Art?
First of all, we know that from one AFCON to another, we'll first of all be talking about the AFCON that the men's handball team are actually or presently in some minutes or some hours will be taking on Tunisia. So we'll be talking about the opener and maybe the chances of that particular competition. Equally, we're talking about basketball, a balance sheet of the first 2 match days. We'll have our experts on the line that will equally be responding to some of our questions. He could not be here in physical. We're going to be talking about the AFCON itself, that is where Senegal had to beat Morocco to be able to back up their second title of the African Nations Cup. We're going to be talking about the classification from Cameroon that has permitted them to go forward and not letting out the Elite One Championship, as well as the Champions League that is back on our TV screen. So we'll be making a roundup of all what's making news out of the country and equally the transfer market there in Europe.
You heard it from him, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned for Sports, which is coming up right after this.